Hello. I'll finish vibing now. I'm done vibing. We are no longer vibing here. Waiting for my stream to catch up with my physical presence. So, anyways, if you haven't taken Shiv's expert advice and listened to Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush and have not unlocked a previously unknown level of vibe, I really encourage you to do that. My thoughts on that song are, if I had, instead of doing film and television, decided to do musical theater or just singing, I would have chosen that song as my senior recital piece because it is so unimaginably high. But also it's so good. It's like this 70s, not 70s, I think it's 80s. I think it's like this 80s sad bop, which is my exact genre of music. So yeah, please, I urge you, take the time today to listen. Don't at me, Patricia. I can't take it. Yeah. We've had a tumultuous emotional day. And we don't need to talk about it. Anyways, please go listen to Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush because the level of vibe is unparalleled. I think I sent Dane to go watch. Hopefully that's where he is at the moment. Oh, I'm losing control of everything. Of my life, of my career. I don't know where any of my books are. I'm pulling things off of my desk. I would oh my gosh, yeah, I was listening to my Spotify recommended, which is, as usual, a bunch of sad boy hits. And this version of Unchained Melody came on that was totally a cappella and just 4 women just weeping. It's beautiful. And I gasped aloud when I figured out what it was. So anyways, there's also a Pat Benatar version of Wuthering Heights that I just looked at. I haven't listened to it yet. I love Pat Benatar, so I imagine that I'm about to get emotionally wrecked. Oh, thank you. It was very, very pretty. Anyways, life updates for me, because I know that's what you're all here for. I kind of want to drop out of film school. I've lost all faith in TFT, and I'm really tired of trying to fix their problems. Oh, thank you, Patricia. I'm really tired of trying to fix their problems for them because I just want to make films, and I just want to not feel like a dumbass when I'm trying to work with lights. And you know what? I came to film school. Patricia, stop tempting me. I have $3 in my bank account. But I came to film school not because plenty of people don't go to film school. And listen, that could have been me. I could have not gone to film school. But plenty of people don't go to film school, and the reason I came to film school was because I don't know technical stuff. I don't. I'm very bad at it. The first my visit to Spain, all of my photos were blue because I didn't know what white balance was. After 2 years at one of the top film schools, don't Shiv, you're gonna make me say it. After 2 years at one of the top film schools in the nation, and how is that okay? But anyways, I came because women get classified as not being able to do technical things. There are practically no female cinematographers. The amount of there are not a lot of female directors. Sure. There are not a lot of I don't know, even more quote unquote girly things like production design and costume design are still somehow male dominated. But cinematography, above anything else, is male dominated. And so, and like, I can't even tell you about like gaffers, and gaffers are the people who are in charge of like lights and stuff like that. Like, those areas of film are just like totally dominated by men. And like, women get taught to shy away from technical things and just be like, oh, I don't know what that is. Ha ha ha. And that's what I don't want to be. I don't want to be able to have like my gaffer, who may be a man at some point in the future, like have be able to hold any sort of knowledge over me. I'm like absolutely not about that. But I also can't learn without having a hands-on thing. Like, no matter how many times my professor shows me a color wheel, I am not going to understand how colors interact until I am physically crossing two spots with colors and seeing a new one come out. It just is not going to happen. So I'm really tired of dealing with that, and I don't want to have to fix it anymore, but I do, and I will. So that's where I am. And sometimes I'm like horrifically depressed about that, and sometimes I'm like angry as hell. And when I'm not either one of those things, I'm playing Candy Crush or trying to, like, I don't know, survive. So anyways, let's read our first quote of the day. My hair is about to get chopped off. Okay. Today I can hum Wuthering Heights. No, Patricia, I can't get past, like, I'm on like 239 right now, and it's not good. I am not very good at this. Why do I always lose my quotes? I'm always like, I don't need to star them. I don't know where I put them. Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so this is from the the chapter on sexuality, and this quote is in the first person from Ibram X. Kendi's point of view. So he says, "I did not know about gender being an authentic performance, that the ways women and men traditionally act are not tied to their biology, that men can authentically perform femininity as effectively as women can authentically perform masculinity." And I just love anything that talks about gender as a performance, because I think that's super cool. And like, as someone who's like very comfortable performing in a traditionally female way, like, it's just really interesting to think about like this way that we've been wired as a performance. And I love it. And I love to talk about it. So that's my first quote for today. But let's actually read Wuthering Heights. Patricia is a graduate of the Gender Studies department at UCLA, so we won't get her started on gender because she could go all night, baby. All right, let's do this. Wuthering Heights. Whoops, I almost forgot. This whole thing smacks of gender. Okay, what happened yesterday? So there's this guy whose name I forgot, but essentially he's like Nick in The Great Gatsby. Mr. Lockwood. Mr. Lockwood comes to town, and he never heard of her. And he has purchased Thrushcross Grange, an estate of which a mysterious fellow named Heathcliff is no, it says Mr. Lockwood. Heathcliff is the landlord of. So Mr. Lockwood's like, I'm gonna go talk to my landlord, just hang out with him. And he's really like, Mr. Lockwood goes, and Heathcliff's just like really like weird, and we don't really like him. And then he's like, don't pet my dog. And the guy's like, oops, sorry, I thought petting dogs was one of the things that is okay, but I guess not. And then Heathcliff leaves him alone, and like Heathcliff's like 45 dogs proceed to attack this man. Oh no, Dane. So Heathcliff's 45 dogs proceed to attack this man. This man is like, hello? Can anyone help me? And then finally, like, this like maid like barrels out of the kitchen with a frying pan and proceeds to like whack the dogs off, and then Heathcliff, like, lazily walks into the room and is like, "What's the problem?" And Mr. Lockwood's like, "So many things." And but then he's like, Heathcliff's like, "Okay, you want some wine?" And Mr. Lockwood's like, "What?" But anyways, he's like, "I could tell that Heathcliff does not enjoy my company, and therefore I am going to inflict it on him." So, me. But not really. That's a mean thing to say to myself, and I would never say that to anyone else. And therefore should not say it to me. Okay. Let's do this. Wuthering Heights, Volume 1, Chapter 2. Yesterday afternoon set in misty and cold. I had half a mind to spend it by my study fire, instead of wading through heath and mud to Wuthering Heights. On coming up from dinner, however, it says NB, I don't know who that is. NB, I dined between 12 and 1 o'clock. The housekeeper, a matronly lady taken as a fixture along with the house, could not or would not comprehend my request that I might be served at 5. Can my hair not do that? On mounting the stairs with this lazy intention and stepping into the room, I saw a servant girl on her knees, surrounded by brushes and coal scuttles, and raising an infernal dust as she extinguished the flames with heaps of cinders. This spectacle drove me back immediately. I took my hat and after a 4 miles walk, arrived at Heathcliff's garden gate just in time to escape the first feathery flakes of a snow shower. On that bleak hill top the earth was hard with a black frost, and the air made me shiver through every limb. Being unable to remove the chain, I jumped over, and running up the flagged causeway, bordered with straggling gooseberry bushes, knocked vainly for admittance, till my knuckles tingled and the dogs howled. "Wretched inmates," I ejaculated mentally. "You deserve perpetual isolation from your species for your churlish inhospitality. At least I would not keep my doors barred in the daytime. I don't care. I will get in. I'm going to break into this man's house." So I resolved. I grasped the latch and shook it vehemently. Vinegar-faced Joseph, what the hell does that mean? Projected his head from a round window of the barn. Oh no! No! She wrote it in the way where it's written how it's pronounced and not how it's written. Does that make sense? So instead of saying what, she said whet. WHET, what are ye for? Huh. Wish me luck. Why do I have so many text messages right now? Oh, good Lord. Oh, good Lord. Oh, no. More sadness. All right. I'm going to try and translate it into something that, oh God. "What are ye for?" he shouted. "The master don it fouled." Okay, it must be down in the fold. "Go round by the end of the lathe if you want to speak to him." Good Lord. "Is there nobody inside to open the door?" I hallooed responsively. "There's nobody but Mrs., and she'll not open and ye make your flaysome dins till night." Good Lord. "Why, cannot you tell her who I am, Joseph?" "Not me. I'll have nothing to do with it, that's my guess," muttered the head, vanishing. The snow began to drive thickly. I seized a handle to essay another trial, when a young man without a coat and shouldering a pitchfork appeared in the yard behind. He hailed me to follow him, and after marching through a wash-house and a paved area containing a coal shed, pump, and pigeon cote, we at length arrived in the large, warm, cheerful apartment where I was formally received. It glowed delightfully in the radiance of an immense fire, compounded of coal, peat, and wood, and near the table, laid for a plentiful evening meal, I was pleased to observe the Missus, an individual whose existence I had never previously suspected. I bowed and waited, thinking she would bid me take a seat. She looked at me, leaning back in her chair, and remained motionless and mute. "Rough weather," I remarked. "I'm afraid, Mrs. Heathcliff, the floor must bear the consequence of your servant's leisure attendance. I had hard work to make them hear me." She never opened her mouth. I stared. She stared also. At any rate, she kept her eyes on me in a cool, regardless manner, exceedingly embarrassing and disagreeable. Ew, you're looking at me? How embarrassing. This is how I get into predicaments. Who's the young man? "Sit down," said the young man gruffly. "He'll be in soon." What? I obeyed and hemmed and called the villain Juno, who deigned at this second interview to move the extreme tip of her tail in a token of owning my acquaintance. Good Lord. "A beautiful animal," I commenced again. "Do you intend parting with these little ones, madam?" "They are not mine," said the amiable hostess more repellingly than Heathcliff himself could have replied. "Ah, your favorites are among these," I continued, turning to an obscure cushion full of something like cats. I want an obscure cushion. All right, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. This is what I get. Okay. Glamorous. I cannot. Okay. Something like cats. That's where we were. Something like cats. Oh, God. "A strange choice of favorites," she observed scornfully. Unluckily, it was a heap of dead rabbits. I hemmed once more and drew closer to the hearth, repeating my comment on the wildness of the evening. "You should not have come out," she said, rising and reaching from chimney-piece 2 of the painted canisters. Her position before was sheltered from the light. Now I had a distinct view of her whole figure and countenance. She was slender and apparently scarcely past girlhood. An admirable form and the most exquisite little face I have ever had the pleasure of beholding. Small features, flaxen ringlets, or rather golden, hanging loose on her delicate neck, and eyes. Had they been agreeable in expression, they would have been irresistible. Fortunately for my susceptible heart, that's me, the only sentiment they evinced hovered between scorn and a kind of desperation, singularly unnatural to be detected there. The canisters were almost out of her reach. I made a motion to aid her. She turned upon me as a miser might turn if anyone attempted to assist him in counting his gold. "I don't want your help," she snapped. "I can get them for myself." "I beg your pardon," I hastened to reply. "Were you asked to tea?" she demanded, tying an apron over her neat black frock and standing with a spoonful of the leaf poised over the pot. "I shall be glad to have a cup," I answered. "Were you asked?" she repeated. Ooh, I love her. "No," I said, half smiling. "You are the proper person to ask me." She flung the tea back, spoon and all, and resumed her chair in a pet, her foreground corrugated, and her red underlip pushed out like a child's ready to cry. Meanwhile, the young man had slung onto his person a decidedly shabby undergarment, and, erecting himself before the flame, looked down on me from the corner of his eyes, for all the world as if there were some mortal feud unavenged between us. I began to doubt whether he were a servant or not. His dress and speech were both rude. Excuse me? What does that mean? Entirely devoid of the superiority observable in Mr. and Mrs. Heathcliff. His thick brown curls were rough and uncultivated. His whiskers encroached bearishly over his cheeks, and his hands were embrowned like those of a common laborer. Still, his bearing was free, almost haughty, and he showed none of a domestic's assiduity in attending on the lady of the house. In the absence of clear proofs of his condition, I deemed it best to abstain from noticing his curious conduct, and 5 minutes afterwards the entrance of Heathcliff relieved me, in some measures, from my uncomfortable state. You see, sir, I am come according to promise, I exclaimed, assuming the cheerful, and I fear I shall be weather-bound for half an hour, if you can afford me shelter during that space. Half an hour? He said, shaking the white flakes from his clothes. I wonder you should select the thick of a snowstorm to ramble about in. Do you know that you run a risk of being lost in the marshes? People familiar with these moors often miss their road on such evenings, and I can tell you there is no chance of change at present. Perhaps I can get a guide among your lads, and he might stay at the Grange till morning. Could you spare me one? No, I could not. Oh, indeed. Well, then, I must trust to my own sagacity. Umph. Are you going to make the tea? Demanded he of the shabby coat, shifting his ferocious gaze from me to the young lady. Is he to have any? She asked, appealing to Heathcliff. Get it ready, will you? Was the answer, uttered so savagely that I started. The tone in which the words were said revealed a genuine bad nature. I no longer felt inclined to call Heathcliff a capital fellow. It took you that long? When the preparations were finished, he invited me with, Now, sir, bring forward your chair. And we all, including the rustic youth, drew round the table, an austere silence prevailing while we discussed our meal. I thought if I had caused the cloud, it was my duty to make an effort to dispel it. They could not every day sit so grim and taciturn, I think. Taciturn? No, definitely not. And it was impossible, however ill-tempered they might be, that the universal scowl they wore was their everyday countenance. It is strange, I began in the interval, swallowing one cup of tea and receiving another. It is strange how custom can mold our tastes and ideas. Many could not imagine the existence of happiness in a life of such complete exile from the world as you spend, Mr. Heathcliff, yet I'll venture to say that, surrounded by your family and with your amiable lady as the presiding genius over your home and heart, my amiable lady, he interrupted, with an almost diabolical sneer on his face. Where is she, my amiable lady? Woof. Mrs. Heathcliff, your wife, I mean. Well, yes. Oh, you would intimate that her spirit has taken the post of a ministering angel and guards the fortunes of Wuthering Heights even when her body is gone. Is that it? Perceiving myself in a blunder, I attempted to correct it. I might have seen there was too great a disparity between the ages of the parties to make it likely that they were man and wife. One was about 40, a period of mental vigor at which men seldom cherish the delusions of being married for love by girls. That dream is reserved for the solace of our declining years. The other did not look 17. Then it flashed upon me. The clown at my elbow, excuse me, who is drinking his tea out of a basin and eating his bread with unwashed hands, may be her husband. Heathcliff Jr., of course. Here's the consequence of being buried alive. She has thrown herself away upon that bore, from sheer ignorance that better individuals existed. A sad pity. I must beware how I cause her to regret her choice. This guy is just like dumb as a brick. He has such good intentions, but good Lord. Oh my God, this is a long chapter. We're in it now. The last cause of reflection may seem conceited. It was not. I think I'll be the judge of that. My neighbor struck me as bordering on repulsive. I knew through experience that I was tolerably attractive. At least he is a self-aware and self-loving king. Mrs. Heathcliff is my daughter-in-law, said Heathcliff, corroborating my surmise. He turned as he spoke, a peculiar look in her direction, a look of hatred, unless he has a most perverse set of facial muscles that will not, like those of other people, interpret the language of his soul. Ah, certainly. I see now. You are the favored possessor of the beneficent fairy," I remarked, turning to my neighbor. This was worse than before. The youth grew crimson and clenched his fist with every appearance of a mediated assault. But he seemed to recollect himself presently, which smothered the storm in a brutal curse, muttered on my behalf, which, however, I took no care to notice. "Unhappy in your conjectures, sir," observed my host. "We neither of us have the privilege of owning your good fairy. Her mate is dead. I said she was my daughter-in-law, therefore she must have married my son. And this young man is not my son, assuredly." Heathcliff smiled again, as if it were rather too bold a jest to attribute the paternity of that bear to him. "My name is Hareton Earnshaw," growled the other, "and I counsel you to respect it." "Well, I shall show no disrespect," was my reply, laughing internally at the dignity with which he announced himself. Oh my God, what's wrong with these people? He fixed his eye on me longer than I cared to return the stare, for fear I might be tempted either to box his ears or render my hilarity audible. I began to feel unmistakably out of place in that pleasant family circle. The dismal spiritual atmosphere overcame and more than neutralized the glowing physical comforts round me, and I resolved to be cautious how I ventured under those rafters a third time. Maybe you shouldn't. The business of eating being concluded, and no one uttering a word of sociable conversation, I approached a window to examine the weather. A sorrowful sight I saw, dark night coming down prematurely, and sky and hills mingled in one bitter whirl of wind and suffocating snow. "I don't think it possible for me to get home now without a guide," I could not help exclaiming. "The roads will be buried already, and if they were bare, I could scarcely distinguish a foot in advance." "Hareton, drive those sheep into the barn porch. They'll be covered if left in the fold all night. Put a plank before them," said Heathcliff. "How must I do?" I continued with rising irritation. There was no reply to my question, and on looking round, I saw only Joseph bringing in a pail of porridge for the dogs, and Mrs. Heathcliff leaning over the fire, diverting herself with a burning bundle of matches, which had fallen from the chimney-piece as she restored the tea canister to its place. The former, when he had deposited his burden, took a critical survey of the room, and in cracked tones grated out, "Oh God, I wonder how you can fashion to stand there in idleness when all of them's gone odd. But you are now to know, and it's no use talking. You'll never mend of your ill ways, but go straight to the devil like your mother before you." That's a struggle. I imagined for a moment that this piece of eloquence was addressed to me, and sufficiently enraged, stepped towards the aged rascal with the intention of kicking him out the door. Mrs. Heathcliff, however, checked me by her answer. "You scandalous old hypocrite," she replied, "are you not afraid of being carried away bodily whenever you mention the devil's name? I warn you to refrain from provoking me, or I'll ask your abduction as a special favor." I'm really loving reading this, like any one of the Mean Girls. "Stop, look here, Joseph," she continued, taking a long, dark book from a shelf. "I'll show you how far I've progressed in the black art. I shall soon be competent to make a clear house of it. The red cow didn't die by chance, and your rheumatism can hardly be reckoned among providential visitations." "Oh, wicked, wicked," gasped the elder. "May the Lord deliver us from evil." "No, reprobate. You are a castaway. Be off, or I'll hurt you seriously. I'll have you all modeled in wax and clay, and the first who passes the limits I fix shall. I'll not say what he shall be done to, but you'll see. Go, I'm looking at you." The little witch put a mock malignity into her beautiful eyes, and Joseph, trembling with sincere horror, hurried out, praying and ejaculating "wicked" as he went. I don't love her use of that word. I'm not gonna lie to you. Um, anyways, go watch The Witch by Robert Eggers. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's very wrong. I actually don't have to worry about dropping out of film school because they just kicked me out for saying that. Mm, yeah. I usually don't like body horror movies, but I liked that one. Okay, okay. And what is his name? Oh, I was right. They let me back in. It is Robert Eggers. I get it confused with like Roger Ebert or something. He was a big critic. Um, uh, the little yeah, blah, 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 blah. I thought her conduct must be prompted by a species of dreary fun. Oh, good lord. And now that we were alone, I endeavored to interest her in my distress. Mrs. Heathcliff, I said earnestly, you must excuse me for troubling you. I presume because, with that face, I'm sure you cannot help being good-hearted. Do point out some landmarks by which I may know my way home. I have no more idea how to get there than you would have how to get to London. Take the road you came, she answered, ensconcing herself in a chair with a candle and the long book open before her. It is brief advice, but as sound as I can give. Then, if you hear of me being discovered dead in a bog or a pit full of snow, your conscience won't whisper that it is partly your fault? How so? I cannot escort you. They wouldn't let me go they wouldn't let me go to the end of the garden wall. You? I should be sorry to ask you to cross the threshold for my convenience on such a night. I cried. I want you to tell me my way, not show it, or else persuade Mr. Heathcliff to give me a guide. Who? There is himself, Earnshaw, Zillah, Joseph, and I. Which would you have? Are there no boys at the farm? No, those are all. Then it follows that I am compelled to stay. That you may settle with your host. I have nothing to do with it. I hope it will be a lesson to you to make no more. Oh shit, that's Heathcliff. I hope it will be a lesson to you to make no more rash journeys on these hills, cried Heathcliff's stern voice from the kitchen entrance. As to staying here, I don't keep accommodations for visitors. You must share a bed with Hareton or Joseph, if you do. Well, I can sleep in a chair in this room. I replied, no, no. A stranger is a stranger, be he rich or poor. It will not suit me to permit anyone the range of the place while I am off guard, said the unmannerly wretch. With this insult, my patience was at an end. I uttered an expression of disgust and pushed past him into the yard, running against Earnshaw in my haste. It was so dark that I could not see the means of exit, and as I wandered round, I heard another specimen of our civil behavior amongst each other. At first, the young man appeared about to befriend me. I'll go with him as far as the park, he said. You'll go with him to hell, exclaimed his master, or whatever relation he bore. And who is to look after the horses, eh? A man's life is of more consequence than one's evening's neglect of the horses. Somebody must go, murmured Mrs. Heathcliff, more kindly than I expected. Oh, God. Not at your command, retorted Hareton. If you set store on him, you better be quiet. Then I hope his ghost will haunt you, and I hope Mr. Heathcliff will never get another tenant till the Grange is a ruin, she answered sharply. Oh my God, there are too many people. Hearken, hearken, she's cursed on him, muttered Joseph, towards whom I had been steering. He sat within earshot, milking the cows, by the aid of a lantern which I seized unceremoniously, calling out that I would send it back on the morrow, rushed to the nearest postern. Master, master, he's stealing the lantern, shouted the ancient, pursuing my repeat. Oh God, this is a disaster of a social visit. This is like what anxious introverts think is gonna happen when we go out with someone or just go to see somebody. Hey Nasher, hey dog, hey wolf, hold him, hold him. On opening the little door, two hairy monsters flew at my throat, bearing me down and extinguishing the light, while a mangled waif from Heathcliff and Hareton put the copstone on my rage and humiliation. Fortunately, the beasts seemed more bent on stretching their paws and yawning and flourishing their tails than devouring me alive. But they would suffer no resurrection, and I was forced to lie till their malignant masters pleased to deliver me. Then, hatless and trembling with wrath, I ordered the miscreants to let me out, on their peril to keep me 1 minute longer, with several incoherent threats of retaliation that, in their indefinite depth of virulency, smacked of King Lear. The vehemence of my agitation brought on a copious bleeding at the nose, and still Heathcliff laughed, and as still I scolded. I don't know what would have concluded the scene had there not been one person at hand rather more rational than myself, and more benevolent than my entertainer. This was Zillah, the stout housewife, who at length issued forth to inquire into the nature of the uproar. She thought some of them had been laying violent hands on me, and not daring to attack her master, she turned her vocal artillery against the younger scoundrel. Well, Mr. Earnshaw, she cried, I wonder what you'll have agate next. Are we going to murder folk on our very doorstones? I see this house will never do for me. Look at the poor lad, he's fair choking. You mustn't go on so. Come in, and I'll cure that. There now, hold still. With these words, she suddenly splashed a pint of icy water down my neck and pulled me into the kitchen. Mr. Heathcliff followed, his accidental merriment expiring quickly with his habitual moroseness. I was sick exceedingly, and dizzy, and faint, and thus compelled, perforce, to accept lodgings under his roof. He told Zillah to give me a glass of brandy, and then passed on to the inner room, while she condoled with me on my sorry predicament, and having obeyed his orders, whereby I was somewhat revived, ushered me to bed. And that's the end of the chapter. What a way to go, and what a way to live. What a disaster. I can't even imagine why. First of all, why would you go back there? And then why would you be like, looks like snow, time to go, in this place I have no idea about. All right. I'm logging off for today. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Thursday, and I will see you at, there's an eyelash in my eyeball, 3. I will see you at 3, the same time that we've been doing this for many, many weeks. I haven't seen the last unicorn. I'll have to check it out. Okay. If it's another recommendation like Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush, we're about to vibe incredibly hard. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Love you all so much. See you tomorrow. Bye. Bye.